Have you ever looked at an old towering tree and wondered what stories it could tell if it had a voice? Imagine all the seasons it has seen the people who have rested in its shade, the whispers it has heard on the wind. The story of America is a lot like that tree. It's ancient, its roots run deep, and its branches have grown in directions no one could have ever predicted. This isn't just a story about dates and famous names you might hear in a classroom. It's a story about people. It's a story about hopes and heartbreaks, about big dreams. Long, long ago, when the world was a very different place, the land we now call America was a wild and untouched wilderness. Imagine a time before skyscrapers, before highways, before even the smallest towns. Endless forests, so thick sunlight struggled to reach the ground, vast grassy plains with thundering bison herds, deserts painted in shades of red and orange. This land was not empty, home to millions of people, the first Americans, Native Americans, indigenous peoples. They were the original explorers, the original settlers, the ones who first learned the secrets of this continent, hundreds of distinct nations. Imagine you are playing on a beach you have known your entire life. You know every shell, every rock, every sound the waves make. Then one day, you look out at the ocean and see something you have never seen before. It looks like a giant wooden bird with white wings, moving silently across the water. This is what it must have been like for the Native Americans in 1492. They saw the ships of Christopher Columbus and his crew arriving from Europe. For the Europeans, it was a new world, a discovery. But for the people already living there, it was the beginning of a profound and often painful transformation of their world. Explorers came from Spain, France, England, and other European countries. They were looking for gold and riches, a faster trade route to Asia, and a place to practice their religion freely, away from kings and queens. They brought things the Native Americans had never seen: metal tools, powerful guns, large sailing ships, horses, cows. As more and more people sailed across the Atlantic Ocean from England, they began to build new homes along the eastern coast of America. Settlements grew into 13 separate communities called colonies. Imagine 13 different rooms in one very large house. The owner was the King of Great Britain, living far across the ocean. Northern colonies like Massachusetts, people seeking religious freedom, busy towns focused on shipbuilding. Southern colonies. Virginia, South Carolina, warmer climate perfect for farming, huge farms called plantations, cash crops. Tobacco plantation owners brought people from Africa against their will, ships carrying enslaved people, forced brutal labor with no freedom or pay. Enslaved people treated as property. For a long time, colonists considered themselves British subjects, loyal to the king, but an ocean away changes you. A new identity began to form. They felt they'd built the house themselves. Trouble started when the king and British government made new rules without asking. Taxes on tea, sugar, paper. Imagine parents charging you to play with your favorite toy. Colonists felt this was unfair. They declared no taxation without representation, no voice in government. This idea lit the fuse for revolution. Finally, they decided they had no choice but to declare their independence. On July 4th, 1776, a group of brave leaders signed a famous document called the Declaration of Independence. It laid out a revolutionary idea that all people are created equal and have the right to life. However, the new nation was born with a deep and terrible contradiction. The Declaration of Independence said that all men are created equal, yet hundreds of thousands of people were still enslaved. The promise of freedom and liberty did not apply to them. This was the great argument, the house divided that would haunt the country for decades, eventually pushing the young country toward its most devastating conflict, the Civil War. The southern states decided to leave the United States to form their own country where slavery would be protected forever. The northern states, led by President Abraham Lincoln, fought to keep the country together and ultimately to end slavery. The Civil War was the deadliest conflict in American history. It was a war of brother against brother. It was a brutal, heartbreaking struggle that tore the nation apart, leaving deep scars that would take generations to heal. The very soul of America was on the line. President Lincoln, who believed in the promise of the Declaration of Independence, issued the Emancipation Proclamation, which declared that enslaved people in the rebellious southern states were free. This transformed the war from a fight to save the country into a fight for human freedom. After 4 long and bloody years, the North won. The country was reunited, and slavery was ended everywhere with the 13th Amendment. The house was saved from collapsing, but it was badly damaged and in need of major repairs. Reconstruction, a time of great hope, but also great difficulty. But many in the South resisted these changes with anger and violence. After the Civil War, America entered a period of incredible, fast-paced change. It was like someone had pressed the fast-forward button on history. The country was expanding westward, with settlers moving across the plains, settlers moving across the mountains, often in conflict with the Native American tribes whose lands they were taking. Railroads stitched the country together like iron threads, making it possible to travel from New York to California in days instead of months. In the cities, new inventions were changing everything. Thomas Edison's light bulb turned night into day, and Alexander Graham Bell's telephone allowed voices to travel across wires. This era, known as the Industrial Revolution, saw the rise of giant factories. Millions of people poured into cities to work in them. Immigrants arriving from Ireland, from Italy, from Poland, from China, and many other places, all dreaming of a better life in America. This mix of cultures made the country a vibrant melting pot. But life was often very hard. People worked long hours in dangerous conditions for very little pay. It was a time of great wealth for a few factory owners, and great hardship for the many who did the work. Then came the 20th century, a whirlwind of even more dramatic changes. Even as America was building skyscrapers and reaching for the stars, the promise of liberty and justice for all was still not a reality for many of its citizens. The unfair rules of segregation in the South, known as Jim Crow laws, meant that African Americans were treated as second-class citizens. They were forced to use separate water fountains, bus seats. They were denied the right to vote through unfair tests and threats of violence. A new generation of brave leaders rose up to demand change. This movement became known as the Civil Rights Movement. It was led by powerful voices like Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who believed in fighting injustice not with fists, but with peace. He taught people the power of nonviolent protest, of marches, sit-ins, boycotts. Think of it as a way of showing how unfair a rule is by bravely and peacefully refusing to follow it, no matter the consequences. People of all races joined together, facing down angry mobs and police dogs, to demand that America live up to its own promises. They pushed the government to pass historic laws, like the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Voting Rights Act of 1965. So, here we are today, on August 26, 2025, living in the latest chapter of this incredible, complicated story. The river of American history continues to flow, shaped by all the streams that have come before it. We live in a world created by the wisdom of the first peoples, the dreams of the founders, the pain of slavery and civil war, the ingenuity of its inventors, and the courage of those who fought for justice. The story of America is not a simple tale of heroes and villains. It's a human story, filled with moments of breathtaking greatness and moments of profound failure. The challenges we face today are different from those of the past, but the spirit needed to face them is the same. Understanding this story gives you a kind of superpower. And now, the pen is being passed to you.